First contact. The sleek diplomatic vessel Terrestrial Envoy glided towards Nexus Station, its silver hull gleaming against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. Inside, Ambassador Elena Reyes adjusted her collar for the 100th time, her dark eyes fixed on the looming structure outside the view screen. "Nervous, Ambassador?" Captain Jack Harper asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. Elena shot him a look. "Wouldn't you be? We're about to make first contact with a galactic coalition of alien species. The fate of humanity's place in the stars rests on our shoulders." Harper nodded, his expression sobering. "Fair point. But remember, we've prepared for this. We're ready." As the Terrestrial Envoy approached the docking bay, Elena couldn't help but marvel at the station's design. Nexus was a massive structure, easily dwarfing anything humanity had built in space. Its curved, organic lines spoke of an alien aesthetic, with glowing conduits pulsing with energy along its surface. The ship settled into its assigned berth with a gentle thud. Elena took a deep breath, straightening her back. "All right, team. This is it. Remember your training, and let's show them what humanity has to offer." The airlock cycled open, revealing a delegation of aliens waiting to greet them. Elena's eyes widened as she took in the diverse array of species before her. There were tall, willowy beings with iridescent skin, bulbous creatures floating in personal atmosphere bubbles, and what appeared to be sentient crystalline structures. At the forefront stood a being that reminded Elena of an upright caterpillar, its body covered in fine, shimmering fur. It extended two of its many limbs in what Elena recognized as a greeting gesture. "Welcome to Nexus Station," the alien said, its voice a melodious trill. "I am High Counselor Zixlith of the Galactic Confederation. We are pleased to finally meet the representatives of humanity." Elena stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Thank you, High Counselor. I am Ambassador Elena Reyes of Earth. We are honored to be here and look forward to discussing our potential place within the Galactic Confederation." As Elena spoke, she noticed a ripple of what seemed like surprise pass through the alien delegation. Zixlith's antennae twitched, and the High Counselor exchanged glances with its companions. "Yes, well," Zixlith said, its tone slightly different now. "We have much to discuss. Please, follow us to the conference chamber." As they walked through the station's sweeping corridors, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The aliens kept stealing glances at the human delegation, their expressions, on those who had recognizable faces, a mix of curiosity and, was that disappointment? They entered a vast, circular room dominated by a large holographic display in its center. As the human team took their seats, Elena noticed that the chairs seemed poorly suited to human physiology. She shifted uncomfortably, trying to find a stable position. "Now then," Zixlith began, its many limbs gesticulating as it spoke, "we have reviewed the information packet your species sent ahead. I must say, we find some of your claims questionable." Elena frowned. "Questionable? In what way, High Counselor?" A holographic display flickered to life, showing images of Earth and human achievements. Zixlith's limb waved through the display. "You claim to have mastered spaceflight, yet your vessels are primitive compared to ours. You speak of great scientific advancements, yet your bodies seem ill-equipped for the rigors of space." The High Counselor's gaze settled on Elena's hands, which were resting on the table. "And these appendages, how do you manipulate complex machinery with such limited digits?" Elena felt a flash of indignation, but she kept her voice level. "I assure you, High Counselor, that while our technology may be different from yours, it is far from primitive. As for our hands, they are more than capable of fine manipulation and have served us well in our technological development." Another alien, a being that seemed to be made of overlapping plates, leaned forward. "But surely, Ambassador, you must realize how fragile your species appears. How can you hope to contribute meaningfully to the Confederation in your current state?" Elena exchanged glances with Captain Harper, who gave her a subtle nod. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the delicacy of their situation. "I understand that we may seem different from what you're accustomed to," she said carefully, "but I assure you, appearances can be deceiving. Humanity has overcome numerous challenges in our history, and we believe we have much to offer the Confederation." Zixlith's antennae twitched again. "Perhaps. We shall see. For now, let us discuss the terms of your probationary membership." As the negotiations began in earnest, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that they were fighting an uphill battle. The aliens seemed to have already formed their opinions of humanity, and those opinions were far from flattering. Hours later, as the human delegation returned to their ship for the night cycle, Alina slumped into a chair in the conference room. "Well, that could have gone better," she muttered. Captain Harper sat across from her, his expression grim. "They're not even trying to hide their disdain. Did you see how they reacted when we mentioned our AI research?" Alina nodded. "It's like they've already decided we're not worth taking seriously. But we can't give up. There's too much at stake." "Agreed," Harper said. "But how do we change their minds?" Alina stared out the viewport at the alien station, her mind racing. "We need to show them what we're capable of. Not just tell them, but demonstrate it in a way they can't ignore." Little did Alina know, an opportunity to do just that was rapidly approaching, one that would test the limits of human ingenuity and forever change the aliens' perception of their species. Cultural exchange. The next few days on Nexus Station were a whirlwind of diplomatic meetings, technological demonstrations, and cultural exchanges. Ambassador Alina Reyes and her team worked tirelessly to showcase humanity's achievements, but at every turn, they were met with skepticism and thinly veiled condescension from their alien counterparts. On the third day, Alina found herself in a vast chamber that served as the station's scientific hub. Holographic displays flickered with complex equations and 3D models of various technologies. The human team had been invited to present some of Earth's recent breakthroughs, but Alina could sense the disinterest radiating from the alien scientists. Dr. Aisha Patel, the team's lead scientist, stepped forward to begin her presentation on Earth's latest advancements in quantum computing. As she spoke, Alina noticed several alien scientists exchanging what she interpreted as amused glances. Finally, one of them, a being that resembled a sentient cloud of gas contained within a transparent exoskeleton, interrupted. "Excuse me, Dr. Patel, but are you suggesting that your species is only now grasping the basics of quantum entanglement?" Aisha paused, caught off guard. "Well, we've made significant progress in the last decade. My dear," the gaseous being continued, its tone dripping with condescension, "we mastered these principles millennia ago. Perhaps we should move on to something more current." Alina saw Aisha's jaw clench, but the scientist maintained her composure. "Of course. Let me show you our work on artificial intelligence and machine learning." As Aisha switched topics, Alina leaned closer to Captain Harper. "This isn't working," she whispered. "We need to change tactics." Harper nodded grimly. "Agreed. But how?" They seemed determined to dismiss everything we present. Before Alina could respond, an alert chimed through the station. High Counselor Zixlith's voice echoed through the chamber. "Attention all delegates. We will be conducting an emergency drill in 1 hour. Please prepare accordingly and report to your designated safety zones." Alina saw an opportunity. "Captain, gather the team. I have an idea." An hour later, as the station's alarms blared, Alina led her team not to their assigned safety zone, but to the central control room. They found Zixlith there, surrounded by a flurry of activity as various alien species rushed to their stations. "Ambassador Reyes," Zixlith said, surprise evident in its voice. "This is not your designated area." Alina stepped forward confidently. "High Counselor, we'd like to offer our assistance in this drill. We believe it's an excellent opportunity to demonstrate some of humanity's crisis management techniques." Zixlith's antennae twitched in what Alina had come to recognize as irritation. "That won't be necessary, Ambassador. Our protocols are well established and..." Suddenly, a holographic display flashed red, and a cacophony of alien voices filled the room. Elena couldn't understand the words, but the tone of panic was universal. "What's happening?" she asked, looking around at the chaos. A crystalline being nearby chittered rapidly, its facets flashing with alarm. Zixlith turned to Elena, its composure slipping. "It seems there's been a malfunction in the drill program. The station's systems think this is a real emergency, and they're initiating a full lockdown and life support shutdown." Captain Harper stepped forward. "Let us help. Dr. Patel is an expert in AI systems. She might be able to." "Out of the question," Zixlith snapped. "Your primitive understanding of our technology would only make things worse. Please return to your ship immediately." Elena stood her ground. "With all due respect, High Counselor, we're all at risk here. Let us at least try." For a moment, Zixlith seemed to waver. Then, grudgingly, it nodded. "Very well, but do not interfere unless asked." As the situation deteriorated, Elena and her team watched in growing concern. The alien technicians seemed overwhelmed, their actions becoming increasingly frantic as system after system fell to the rogue AI. "This is absurd," Dr. Patel muttered, her eyes darting across the holographic displays. "Their fail-safes are so complex they're working against each other." Elena made a decision. "Aisha, can you do anything?" The scientist nodded hesitantly. "Maybe, if I can access the main system." Elena turned to Zixlith, who was shouting orders in a language she couldn't understand. "High Counselor, please, let Dr. Patel try." Zixlith whirled on her, its fur standing on end. "And risk your primitive programming making things even worse?" "Absolutely not." Just then, the lights flickered, and a low hum permeated the station. "Life support systems failing," an automated voice announced in multiple languages. "Complete shutdown in 10 minutes." Chaos erupted in the control room. In the midst of the panic, Elena locked eyes with Captain Harper. He gave her a subtle nod. "I'm sorry, High Counselor," Elena said, her voice firm. "But we're out of options." She turned to her team. "Dr. Patel, do what you can. Captain Harper, help me keep them off her back." As Aisha rushed to a nearby console, Elena and Harper positioned themselves between her and the increasingly agitated aliens. Zixlith vibrated with fury, its limbs gesticulating wildly. "You have no authority. Security, remove them at once." But as several armed aliens moved towards the humans, a cheer went up from the other side of the room. The red warning lights suddenly blinked out, replaced by a calm blue glow. The hum of the life support systems returned to normal. Dr. Patel stepped back from the console, a mix of relief and pride on her face. "I've isolated the rogue subroutine and initiated a system reset. Everything should be back to normal now." The control room fell silent, all eyes turning to the human team. Elena met Zixlith's gaze, seeing shock and confusion where there had once been only disdain. "How?" the High Counselor asked, its voice barely above a whisper. Elena allowed herself a small smile. "As we've been trying to tell you, High Counselor, humanity has much to offer. Perhaps now you'll be willing to listen." As the gravity of what had just transpired settled over the room, Elena knew they had finally made a breakthrough. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. The real test of humanity's place among the stars was yet to come. Crisis strikes. In the days following the near-disastrous drill, the atmosphere on Nexus Station had shifted palpably. The aliens' overt disdain had been replaced by a wary curiosity. Ambassador Elena Reyes and her team found themselves fielding more genuine questions about human capabilities, though skepticism still lingered in many interactions. As Elena made her way to the daily briefing with High Counselor Zixlith, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of a breakthrough. The aliens were finally starting to see humans as potential allies rather than primitive curiosities. The briefing room was abuzz with activity when Elena arrived. Zixlith's fur was rippling with agitation as it conferred with a group of alien technicians. "Is everything all right, High Counselor? Elena asked as she approached. Zixlith's antennae twitched. Ambassador Reyes. Yes, just a minor technical issue. Nothing to be concerned about. But Elena had spent enough time among the aliens to recognize the signs of stress. Are you sure? If there's anything we can assist with, that won't be necessary. Zixlith cut her off. Now, shall we begin the briefing? As the meeting progressed, Elena couldn't focus. Something felt off. She noticed Captain Harper, seated across the table, shared her unease. His eyes kept darting to the door, where alien technicians were hurrying in and out with increasing frequency. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the station. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered ominously. What was that? Elena demanded, rising to her feet. Zixlith's composure finally cracked. It appears the minor technical issue has escalated. We're experiencing a cascade failure in our power grid. The room erupted into chaos as various alien delegates began shouting questions and demands. Elena raised her voice above the din. High Counselor, what exactly are we dealing with here? Zixlith's many limbs were a blur of motion as it activated a holographic display of the station. Red warning indicators were flashing across multiple sectors. The power fluctuations have triggered a chain reaction, Zixlith explained, its voice strained. Our containment fields are failing. If we can't stabilize them, we risk a total structural collapse. Elena's mind raced. What about evacuation procedures? Our emergency shuttles are automated, one of the alien technicians chimed in. But with the power grid unstable, we can't guarantee they'll function correctly. We could be sending people to their deaths. Another tremor rocked the station, more violent than the last. The lights went out completely, replaced moments later by dim emergency lighting. We're running out of time, Captain Harper said grimly. What's the plan, High Counselor? But Zixlith seemed overwhelmed, its limbs trembling as it stared at the worsening situation displayed on the hologram. Elena realized with a jolt that the alien leadership was freezing up in the face of this crisis. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. All right, we need to act fast. Captain Harper, contact our ship. Have them prep for emergency evacuation procedures. Dr. Patel, I need you to work with the station's engineers. See if you can stabilize the power grid long enough for us to get people out. Now wait just a moment. Zixlith interrupted, finding its voice. You can't simply take control of this situation. Our protocols clearly state. With all due respect, High Counselor, Elena cut in, her voice firm. Your protocols aren't working. Every second we waste arguing is a second closer to disaster. Will you work with us or not? For a tense moment, Zixlith's multifaceted eyes locked with Elena's. Then, slowly, its antennae drooped in acquiescence. Very well, Ambassador. What do you need from us? Elena nodded, relief washing over her. We need to coordinate evacuation efforts. Can you organize your people into groups based on their environmental needs? We'll need to prioritize those with the most critical life support requirements. As Zixlith began relaying orders, Elena turned to the rest of her team. We're going to need every bit of human ingenuity we can muster. This station may be alien tech, but the principles of crisis management are universal. Let's show them what humanity can do. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. Dr. Patel worked tirelessly with the alien engineers, her understanding of complex systems allowing her to bridge the gap between human and alien technology. They managed to stabilize portions of the power grid, buying precious time for the evacuation efforts. Captain Harper coordinated with both the terrestrial envoy and the alien vessels docked at the station, creating a patchwork fleet of rescue ships. His quick thinking and adaptability in the face of wildly different technological systems proved crucial in getting the evacuation underway. Elena found herself at the heart of it all, mediating disputes between panicking alien species, making split-second decisions on resource allocation, and providing a calm center in the storm of chaos. Her diplomatic skills were pushed to their limits as she navigated the complex web of alien politics and priorities. As the crisis wore on, Alina began to notice a change in the aliens' behavior. The dismissive attitudes were gone, replaced by a growing respect as they witnessed the humans' capability and determination firsthand. But despite their best efforts, the situation continued to deteriorate. The station's structure was beginning to buckle under the strain of the power fluctuations. They had managed to evacuate nearly half the station's population, but thousands remained, and time was running out. Alina stood in the command center, now a hive of mixed human and alien activity, staring at the holographic display of the failing station. They needed a breakthrough, and they needed it fast. "Ambassador," Dr. Patel called out, her voice tight with tension. "I think I've found something, but it's risky, very risky." Alina moved to her side, aware of Zixlith and several other alien leaders following close behind. "What is it, Aisha?" Dr. Patel pointed to a complex diagram on her screen. "The station's power core. It's unlike anything we've ever seen, but I think I understand the basic principles. If we can initiate a controlled overload in specific subsystems, we might be able to reset the entire grid." "And if it doesn't work?" Captain Harper asked, his expression grim. Dr. Patel's voice was barely above a whisper. "Then we'll trigger a chain reaction that will tear the station apart in minutes." A heavy silence fell over the group. Alina looked around at the faces of her team, then at the alien leaders who had, until recently, viewed them with such disdain. In that moment, she knew what they had to do. "We're out of options," Alina said, her voice steady. "We have to try." "Dr. Patel, what do you need?" As Aisha began outlining her plan, Alina caught Zixlith's eye. The alien's expression was unreadable, but Alina sensed a newfound respect in its gaze. "You understand the risk you're taking?" Zixlith asked quietly. Alina nodded. "We do, but this is what humanity does, High Counselor. We face the impossible, and we find a way through." As they began implementing Dr. Patel's desperate plan, Alina silently hoped that this show of human resilience wouldn't be their last. Unexpected heroes. The command center of Nexus Station had become a crucible of tension and desperate hope. Dr. Aisha Patel's fingers flew across the alien console, her brow furrowed in concentration as she input the complex calculations for her risky plan. Captain Harper stood by, relaying instructions to the remaining evacuation teams, his voice steady despite the stakes. Ambassador Alina Rice watched it all unfold, her heart pounding. She turned to High Counselor Zixlith, whose multiple limbs were twitching with nervous energy. "How much time do we have left?" The alien's antennae drooped. "At the current rate of structural degradation, no more than 20 Earth minutes." Alina nodded grimly. "Dr. Patel, status update." Aisha didn't look up from her work. "Almost there. The system is resistant. It's like it knows what we're trying to do." A violent tremor shook the station, nearly knocking them off their feet. Warning klaxons blared as new red indicators flashed across the holographic display. "We've lost containment in sectors 7 through 9, an alien technician announced, panic evident in its multi-tone voice. Alina steadied herself against a console. "How many people are still in those sectors?" "At least 300, Captain Harper replied, his face pale. "The life support is failing. They won't last long." A heavy silence fell over the command center. Alina could see the defeat in the alien's eyes, the acceptance of the inevitable. But as she looked at her human team, she saw something else. Determination. "We're not giving up," Alina declared, her voice cutting through the despair. "Captain Harper, take a team and get to those sectors. Use the emergency suits if you have to." "Dr. Patel, how close are you?" Aisha's fingers paused for a moment. "I've almost cracked it, but Alina, I need to be at the main power core to implement the final stage. There's no way to do it remotely." Alina's blood ran cold. The main power core was at the heart of the station, surrounded by the most unstable sectors. "That's suicide, Aisha." "Maybe," the scientist replied, a wry smile on her face. "But it's our only shot." Before Elena could protest further, Captain Harper stepped forward. "I'll go with her. We'll need a security detail anyway, in case we run into any trouble." Elena wanted to argue, to find another way, but she knew they were out of options and out of time. She nodded, her throat tight. "Okay, but you come back, both of you. That's an order." As Harper and Patel prepared to leave, Elena turned to Zixlith. "High Counselor, I need your help. We have to coordinate the remaining evacuation efforts and prepare for the possibility that this doesn't work." Zixlith's antennae twitched in what Elena had come to recognize as surprise. "You would trust me with this, after how we've treated you." Elena managed a small smile. "We're all in this together now. It's time to put aside our differences and work as one." The next 15 minutes were a blur of activity. Elena and Zixlith worked in tandem, their species' strengths complementing each other as they directed the evacuation efforts. The humans' adaptability and quick decision-making meshed with the aliens' intricate knowledge of the station's systems and protocols. Meanwhile, Captain Harper led a team through the deteriorating sectors, braving failing life support systems and structural collapses to rescue the stranded aliens. His leadership and the humans' willingness to risk their lives for beings who had, until recently, looked down on them, didn't go unnoticed. In the main power core, Dr. Patel worked feverishly, sweat beading on her brow inside her emergency suit. The room pulsed with strange energies, the alien technology both familiar and utterly foreign. "How's it looking, Doc?" Harper asked, his voice tense as he kept watch at the entrance. Aisha's voice crackled over the comm. "Almost there. The system is fighting me every step of the way. But I think, yes, I've got it." Back in the command center, Elena watched anxiously as the holographic display flickered and changed. "Something's happening," she announced. For a moment, everything seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a sound like 1,000 thunderclaps, the station shuddered. Lights flared blindingly bright, then died completely. In the sudden darkness, Elena reached out, finding Zixlith's limb and gripping it tightly. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Then, slowly, the lights began to come back on. The constant tremors that had plagued the station for hours finally ceased. "Status report," Elena called out, her voice hoarse. Around the room, aliens of various species began reporting in, their voices a cacophony of relief and disbelief. Systems were coming back online. The structural integrity was stabilizing. The power grid was resetting itself, just as Dr. Patel had predicted. Elena sagged with relief, turning to Zixlith with a smile. The alien's antennae were vibrating with what she now recognized as joy. "It worked," Zixlith breathed. "Your people, they saved us all." But Elena's relief was short-lived as she remembered. "Harper, Patel, come in." For a heart-stopping moment, there was no response. Then, crackling over the comm system, came Captain Harper's tired voice. "We're here, Ambassador." Dr. Patel's plan worked like a charm, requesting emergency medical assistance, though. The doc took a bit of a beating from the energy discharge. As medical teams were dispatched and the full extent of their narrow escape became clear, Elena found herself the center of attention. Aliens of all species approached her, offering thanks, congratulations, and in many cases, apologies for their earlier dismissal of human capabilities. Zixlith approached her last, its posture now one of respect rather than condescension. "Ambassador Reyes," it began, its voice solemn. "On behalf of the Galactic Confederation, I must extend our deepest gratitude and our most sincere apologies. We gravely misjudged your species." Elena nodded, accepting the apology with grace. "Thank you, High Counselor. I hope this experience has shown that despite our differences, we all have something valuable to offer." As the immediate crisis passed and the process of rebuilding began, Elena couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Humanity had proven itself not through grand displays of technology or military might, but through courage, ingenuity, and a willingness to risk everything to save others. The path ahead would not be easy, but as Elena looked around at the mixed groups of humans and aliens working together to restore the station, she knew that a new chapter in galactic relations had begun. The aliens might have underestimated humans at first, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. A new understanding. In the weeks following the near-catastrophic event on Nexus Station, a palpable shift had occurred in the dynamics between humans and the various alien species of the Galactic Confederation. The emergency repairs were well underway, with mixed teams of humans and aliens working side by side, learning from each other's strengths and techniques. Ambassador Elena Rice stood before the hastily reconvened Galactic Council, her posture straight and confident. The chamber, usually filled with hundreds of representatives, was now occupied by a fraction of that number, those who had remained on the station or returned quickly after the crisis. But what the audience lacked in quantity, it made up for in attention. Every alien eye, sensory appendage, or equivalent was fixed on the human diplomat. Distinguished members of the council, Elena began, her voice clear and strong. Recent events have demonstrated the potential for cooperation between our species in ways none of us could have anticipated. Humanity came here seeking a place among the stars, but we found something far more valuable: the opportunity to forge true partnerships based on mutual respect and understanding. She paused, looking around the room. Where once she had seen skepticism and disdain, she now saw curiosity, and in many cases, admiration. We recognize that our technology may differ from yours, that our physical forms may seem strange or even fragile to some of you, but we hope we have shown that the true strength of any species lies not in the form of their bodies or the advancement of their gadgets, but in the ingenuity of their minds and the courage in their hearts. High Counselor Zixlith, seated at the center of the raised dais, leaned forward. Its fur, once bristling with irritation at human presence, now rippled with what Elena had learned was a sign of deep thought. Ambassador Reyes, Zixlith spoke, its voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Your words are well spoken, and your actions have spoken even louder. The Council has deliberated, and we have come to a decision regarding humanity's place in the Galactic Confederation. Elena held her breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Captain Harper and Dr. Patel, standing behind her, tensed visibly. Zixlith's antennae twitched in what Elena now recognized as a smile. We would be honored to welcome humanity as full members of the Confederation, effective immediately. A murmur of approval rippled through the chamber. Elena felt a surge of pride and relief, but Zixlith wasn't finished. Furthermore, the High Counselor continued, in light of the innovative crisis management techniques demonstrated by your species, we would like to propose the establishment of a new division within the Confederation, an emergency response and problem-solving task force, to be jointly led by humans and a rotating selection of other member species. Elena's eyes widened in surprise. This was more than she had ever hoped for. High Counselor, we would be honored to contribute to such an initiative. As the details of the new arrangement were discussed, Elena couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them to this point. The dismissal they had faced upon arrival, the constant need to prove themselves, the crisis that had nearly cost them everything. It all seemed like a distant memory now. Later, as the human team prepared to return to Earth with news of their success, Elena found herself in one of Nexus Station's observation decks. The vast expanse of space stretched out before her, dotted with unfamiliar stars and the occasional ship coming or going from the station. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Captain Harper and Dr. Patil approaching, both still bearing signs of their ordeal, but with smiles on their faces. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Harper remarked, coming to stand beside her. Elena nodded. "It's breathtaking. And to think, this is just the beginning of our journey among the stars." Dr. Patil leaned against the railing, her gaze thoughtful. "You know, When we first arrived, I was so focused on proving our technological prowess. I never imagined it would be our adaptability and teamwork that would make the biggest impression. It's a lesson for all of us, Elena agreed. We came here thinking we needed to show how similar we could be to the other species in the Confederation. Instead, we showed the value of our differences. Captain Harper chuckled. Who would have thought our primitive problem-solving skills and these inefficient appendages would end up saving the day? He wiggled his fingers for emphasis. They all laughed, the sound of their mirth mingling with the low hum of the station. As they stood there, contemplating the future, a group of alien diplomats approached. Elena recognized representatives from at least 5 different species, including a nervous-looking junior aide of Zixlith's species. The aide stepped forward, its antennae twitching anxiously. "Excuse me, Ambassador Reyes. We were hoping, that is, if you're not too busy, could you tell us more about how humans approach problem-solving? And perhaps, could you show us how those remarkable hands of yours work?" Elena exchanged amused glances with her teammates before turning back to the alien group with a warm smile. "Of course, we'd be delighted to share. After all, that's what this alliance is all about, isn't it? Learning from each other." As Elena began her impromptu lecture, demonstrating the dexterity of human hands and fielding questions about Earth's history of innovation, she felt a profound sense of optimism. The road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges, but humanity had proven its worth. They had earned their place among the stars not by dominating or outshining other species, but by working alongside them, contributing their unique perspective to the tapestry of galactic civilization. The future, with all its infinite possibilities, awaited them, and humanity, once dismissed and underestimated, was ready to face it hand in hand with their new allies.